something happened to you? Yeah.
2, 1, you're on.
Oh, we're on.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then let me. I've been giving this a lot of thought, right?
Yeah.
As you know, I've been a lot of research into different principles that I think we, not only you and I, but others, can share. And it's really a tedious process because I want to inform people of some basic operating principles without limiting their input, without limiting what they want to offer, while charging up their imagination and giving them some sense, pull them into the conversation in a way in which we can still maintain their enthusiasm. So, as you know, I've been working on this for a few days. I've got a page and a half that I would like to read from, if you don't mind. And let's see how it goes. Let's see how it sounds. Let's see what your impression is, and if we need to make some edits or changes, or if you have some suggestions. Okay. And I sort of feel like Rod Serling from the Twilight Zone. And that way of reading. Let's see what happens. Okay. I'm ready.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. You are given the responsibility of creating a new world. Not just any world, but a perfect world. Not a world, but a virtual perfect world. Where would you begin? There is nothing there, nothingness, zero, from which all things come. There is only energy, and we are non-beings that have the freedom to create. It is fundamental, after all. There is no external authority demanding reality. We abide by objectivism, positivism, materialism. All we have to work with is our imagination, which is limitless, boundless, without rules. The establishment of rules, or rather parameters, are set by the forms we create. And recreate them again. There is no time in our perfect world, no measurement of movement, as it were. For something to exist, to be, it must move. In moving, it creates an image. For us or for anyone to have an identity, we must establish a unity in movement. For our purposes, now the variations of energy and acknowledge their increasing entropy, which is the randomness or disorder in a system. It constantly increases, which is to be expected naturally. All other matters are determined by the Creator. The hierarchy of systems is established by others depending on one system or another. Cut.
Wow.
And
That's great.
But I'd like to know what you got from that.
Well, I think it,
Because that's what we're doing, right? We're throwing around ideas,
exactly.
and I suppose also kind of creating a catalog for people to go back to if they are interested
Yep.
to be where we started and where we're going from there.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that gives us the great template. Describes, the things that we've been talking about for the last, months and years around, zero and nothingness, and then, the your aspect of image form. What you I heard hints of, it was triggering off memories in my mind about image in motion. Is that the phrase that you used before about
Well, it's two principles actually to start with. Is that in order for something to exist, right?
it has to move.
And when it moves, that's here the next second. Next moment it's there.
Yep.
And when it moves, it creates an image of itself.
Right. Yep.
We can acknowledge it, possibly even measure it.
Mm-hmm.
And the speed with which the image changes images is the measurement I call time.
Yep. Yep.
And then for it to be acknowledged or seen, if you will, by another viewer, then that viewer must in some way relate to we'll just call it an object for the time being. It must relate to this object in a way in which it unifies both viewers.
Exactly.
And in that unification, we create an identity because crude language, we identify with something else. We're in motion because we exist. So it's like seeing that, and suddenly something in the painting moved. That exchange of energy, that image, is a transfer of energy.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to be a painting, but if it does move, it surprises us and pulls us into the painting, into the picture, in a way in which we attempt to establish a relationship with the object that has moved. So we're drawn in, we're focused, we're attached to it, and we create a relationship. And in creating a relationship, we must know who we are, which is called identity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How's that?
No, I can see that. I think, the basis of it, we're talking about really deep and complex things, but really you're putting it simply. So the simple baseline fundamentals that we're talking about is starting from nothing, bringing form into that, and then moving from, what it is to something else. And, we can apply that. And then the key there is also measurement. And that's where the data science can come in. So that those baselines and fundamentals, I think, are perfect for forming this, project Nibiru 600. We say, this is the fundamentals. You bring something out of nothing, and we label it, and we identify it. It becomes identity, and then it moves. And we need to measure the movement from where you start to where it goes. And then if we set up a system that enables you to come immediately you're coming out of nothing, actually. When, we post the ad, there's nothing there, but someone says, hey, I want to be a part of it. Then they say, oh, okay, who are you and what are you bringing into form? So we have to label that and measure that from nothing to something, and we have to measure that. And then, okay, it's a person, it's a data scientist, they work for this company, and they have this project. And then the next, whenever in a certain period of time, we say, well, how's it going? Okay, they've moved. They've now got this project ahead to this point. And yeah, the movement is measured and presented back. I see, in terms of the time management or time the recording that we talked about when we wrote the initial Nibiru 600, coming into play on what we're saying now. But what we've got now is some baseline fundamentals that everybody can read or hear and understand and go forward and say, okay, what am I bringing into form, and how is it changing how is it moving from what it was when I described it yesterday to what it is today, and how am I going to measure that? And I think as part of the process, like what we're building the system around it, so enabling that we have the data science or the technology to help people just go through that process or go through the awareness, understand, in a practical sense, that baseline fundamentals, that there's nothing, you bring form in it, that form moves. And that could be a person.
Absolutely. You brought up an interesting point I want to comment on. I scribbled down the word attraction, right? That's that. It makes me think of the question I was asked once about what is love, right? It's it works in formula principally, because the urge towards reunification. So if something, let's say, everything is not moving, which makes it eternal. The first moment something moves,
right,
then, and another person, or we'll just speak in common language, and another person sees it move, then they relate to it in some fashion, right? Based on wherever they are and what that movement does to them. Well, it attracts their attention, right, in the first place. If it's let's say it's something on the computer, some arrangement of electricity that forms an application. As that application is being performed, then once a person acknowledges their a relationship with that object that has moved, then we create a kind of system or a community, and that second person can make a contribution, even if it's just acknowledging it. You can respond to it, you can ignore it, whatever that second person does in bringing that first system of movement into their own field. And that would mean for me the word application, right? Being applied.
right.
So if a person creates movement and the second person follows it, for lack of a better word, and then they have the freedom to comment on it or to add to it or to take from it or to do nothing about it. Well, if they relate to it, then they have the freedom to make a contribution. And depending on how that first one was created, whether it's an open invitation or it's just a comment or whatever it is, if that second person joins in, then it becomes, as I mentioned earlier, a kind of love affair, right? Because you're in unity in movement, and that's also identity. So if the urge, right, to reunify, then that's the power. I don't want to keep repeating myself. That's a power that pulls a person in, because whatever is being offered is something that the second person doesn't have, and probably the first person either. So then, you get to build a system this way, maybe a kind of interdependency, or at least an acknowledgement that there is an certainly on the first party, who is the creator, say in this case, the originator, then they are making sort of a natural invitation by being seen. And whatever that is, I mean, it could be in the virtual world, the computer world, for instance, electricity is flying everywhere. Then if you make a solid connection with another person because of the application that you designed, then it's in a sense more successful than it would be if you did something like, twiddle your thumbs as an application and it caught nobody's attention. So that's a way of attractive or the power or the kinetic energy behind being an application per se, right? And then we get into ideas of what is the purpose. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is that we've got to begin somewhere really, really small, and it's not an easy job, right? Where do you start with?
Yeah.
Where you go from there? Are you free in a manner in which the two systems can interact and produce another result? And then, I mean, you can extrapolate that out far enough to imagine that if you're the first one on a planet, especially a virtual world, right, and you're looking for perfection, then you're in a place where you can recall any action you've done. It can just disappear, right? It's erased, it's gone. And if you want to recreate it, or somebody caught that and then they respond and you just checked out, then the person who is responding to something that no longer exists is the creator. Right. Yeah. And then you may recall, or you may respond in a way intuitively that you did in the first place, but it changes, the energy exchange changes because you've been reminded, in effect, of something that you once related to. It doesn't have to exist as a memory. It can exist as an original creation.
Yeah.
In that particular instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like when I think of a data scientist, I think of a person. I what is it called? A Philoptera. It's a guy with a big net that chases butterflies, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the net catches a butterfly, and then it's a totally different reality. You've captured an image, a vision, and it's now in your hands.
Yeah.
Not a real butterfly; it's too fragile, but it is just that fragile, and just that way it can go like a butterfly flies. I mean, who can plan where a butterfly is going?
That's right. Yeah. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I mean, some interesting thoughts are coming to mind. I mean, in kind of a practical application is what we're going through right now. The thoughts that came into your head, the words you put down on the paper that came out of just the infinite possibility of your imagination. We've made this recording, we've presented it, and you've shared it with me. And now it's something more I mean, it exists. It's got emphasis around its existence. If it was just in your head and you didn't write it down, or maybe you wrote it down but you didn't read it to me, these are different levels of its, I guess, existence. And over time, that piece of paper, if you didn't read it out, it would have been lost, or it's gone. Or if you didn't write it down, of course, quickly, it would have, other things would have come into your mind. But you've written it down, you've read it, I've heard it, and now we've recorded it. And if we present that out in a system that enables others to comment and react, then it becomes more, I guess, permanent.
Distributed.
Yeah, it becomes distributed, and it gives it more, I don't know what the word is, but it just becomes
expansion. Yeah. It expands the idea.
Right. So, and then we can, and eventually we can see, in my mind, I'm seeing, like, if people go, well, that was a good idea, but they don't do anything about it, and, again, it degrades, and then it's gone. So it's that movement and development of the idea that it keeps it alive and keeps it growing and keeps it in the system. And, this is then on the basis of a new world where nothing exists except for these thoughts or these actions. Things are going to fall away, like as if Darwin's theory of evolution, the survival of the fittest, and those that gain momentum and attraction. And the other thing you mentioned about, unity in motion and the connection to love, I think, that's, I think, inspiring some thoughts on my side. Like, if it sounds in my mind as I say it a little bit hippie, like the meaning of this is to love, or to give people the capability to be loved or be loving. They either, or not just people, but systems or ideas. So this framework, or this, whatever we want to call it, these fundamentals, these ideas that have come from you into paper, so people can apply unity in motion, apply love to it, and it can receive that. It can be loved, and others can be loving. But I think we have to be careful using those words. I mean, in the context of unity in motion, I think, it really gives the basis of where we can explain what we're doing, and give people some fundamentals of, okay, come into Nibiru 600 with your idea, with the forms that you want to create, and know that if they are, loved, then they're going to keep growing, they're going to be sustained. But equally know that if they aren't, they're going to fade away. So
I don't think this is anything that we even want to control, because the exciting part for me, at least, is the nuances, the unexpected, the unpredictable.
That's right.
That's going to happen. And to be, I think, according to Nietzsche, one of the qualities of a god, a creator, if you will, is that they must be light on their feet. Instead of, attaching ourselves to an idea, this is the way it has to be, I don't want any changes. Well, that's something like what's been said about writing. Once you write it down, it's stuck in time. This is why the oral tradition was so important, because you could, it's alive. It's living language. It's not something like, in a book.
Yeah.
Not to discount the value of it, but especially in this virtual world, things have to move. They're made of, and even energy, I believe, would not exist were it not to move. Right? And of course, everything changes states. Right? It can be one form of energy transferred into another form of energy.
That's right.
Which I think is one of the principles that we have that we acknowledge in the beginning, is that it's really to a large extent our control, and in the control of each and every crew. And I think, at least for some conversation we had now or earlier, is that we set 600, maybe 600 different gods or creators, right, to work together in a place that does not exist except in our imagination. Not to say that it cannot achieve material form, because I think, I think it would be nice, but we need to see whether or not it works first.
Yeah.
Good idea, before we start doing what we have already done to the planet, which is principally to destroy it. And I suppose if we were open-minded about it, we might have admit it's not, according to some sources, the first time that the world has been created. Because if we go, I think most people would refer to the Bible, the Torah, or even the oh Jesus, whoops, not the, well, there are lots of different sources we can go to, but let's just stick with the Bible for just a second. Is that the Bible has been attributed, its beginning has been attributed to Sumeria, right, which is like southern Iraq. And there's a long story there about people, or beings, I suppose I should call them, on record in cuneiform tablets about people they call the Anunnaki, which are, cosmonauts from another planet, which is called Nibiru, thus our name, our license. And that's a 3,600 year orbit that comes between, what is it, Mars and Jupiter or something like that. And when it comes in that way, it affects us on Earth in the same way that whether you're having a new moon or a full moon. Look what it does to the tides. And who knows, because I don't think anybody has made a record that survived, not yet anyway, about what happens at that point in time that civilization fails, right? Gone. It doesn't take an ice age. It can take something like what we're experiencing now, totally different patterns of thinking with this election, or if you want to call it that, in the United States in 2020. Now we're in 2021. And who knows, but I think really, if we acknowledge the fact that change is the only constant, right? We can't hang on to something, that everything changes every moment, still using common language about measuring time. It doesn't exist, and yet it does. And in the virtual that we want without destroying the planet. It's when, the whole community, let's say community of 600, which I believe at one time was supposed to be the number of Anunnaki, the space. Well, they're not really gods. They just, what is a god? A god is something that we are not. And so I suppose there could be a number of different gods within that definition, right? If you were to ask. And so, we can trace it back to these people. Let's say it's a matter of choice. Instead of believing in imaginary beings, there are records. Well, there's another argument there as to whether or not these beings from Nibiru infused genetic code into hominids on planet Earth for their own purposes as workers, they said. I think it was in gold mining, where they had their own need for gold on the planet, atmospheric and otherwise. So the legend goes, and I'm not making this up. You know, more and more I keep seeing on YouTube, especially, and thank you, YouTube, for supplying this history of Sumeria, cuneiform, you know, Anunnaki, Nibiru. It's endless now. And then you've got Göbekli Tepe, which is all in southern Turkey, I believe, which is another civilization that existed many, many eons ago. And where's the leap from when people started farming, for instance, or there was wheat or barley, or the wheel, or mathematics, or astrology? You know, the list is endless. And for people, humans, to have those tools available overnight without some gift from another is highly unlikely. And I think we have the same potential, you know, as they did, according to legend, to do the same thing. Except hopefully we learn from where we are now, that we are really just destroying ourselves, and that we have the potential of creating a new world, right? In our imagination and on record, as you pointed out, with the help of data scientists such as yourself, and the others that you work with, to be able to do better this time around without a total global, you know, deluge or total disaster which wipes the world clean, except for a few people. Wow, that was a lot.
No, that's
And your comment?
yeah, and
Follow up that one, Troy.
well, from my angle, what I see is, you know, we're looking to build the perfect virtual world, and we have the technology, we have the capability, we have the imagination to be able to do that. And there are history, you know, records and things in the past that we can learn from and understand, you know, what might have happened, what has happened, and how we can apply that to something new. And yeah, it's just the aspect that we want to bring together this number 600 of people together to start. And in some ways, the less we have in the beginning, the better, or the bigger the opportunity it is for it to come together as unity in motion, a unity of thoughts, a unity of recognition, and the support that we would have between 600 people about, you know, how to start, how to make it grow, and the allowing things to evolve or dissolve. And yeah, this is the Nibiru 600 project, and you know, we can base it on the themes and aspects of creating something, like we have been talking about the movie references, like being able to direct it and script it to a place that we think is, yeah, going to be sustainable, but also, you know, entertaining and fun and enjoyable. So I think it's, yeah, all sounds great to me. And
well, yeah, it's another way of meeting people.
yep.
Maybe I would even venture to say like-minded people. right? Who have a high degree of courage, I think, and who are willing to follow this, or not follow this, to work together on this, to see if we can bring something like this into reality, even if it's temporary reality, right?
Yep.
And it's better than not doing anything, I think.
Exactly.
And then, with thanks to you and the cyber sphere, we can get people from anywhere, from everywhere on the planet, as long as they can connect to the internet, right? And we can share ideas. And I want to say, I don't think that we are limiting membership to 600 people, because theoretically, everyone is invited, particularly if we in sharing, if we come up with something more monumental than Congress does, or the legislature, or the tribal rulers, or whoever they are, then we can agree on mass. Everybody is more than welcome to come and to contribute and shift our reality, if you want to call it that, around, until we find an approach that we can agree on, that's plausible, that's practical, that's not limited by human emotions, like hatred or envy or things of that nature, or resentment as well. I think is a big no-no. Because there's no reason to resent anything if you're a contributor, and one thing I found, I've even found in my own change my life, is that not to resent other people because they have more than you do, but in material wealth. I mean, that's only one single way of looking at things. He drives a convertible, I'm driving, well, aren't those manifestations of each person's individual life? And do I want to live another person's life? Why should I? I've got one of my own. And every time, that we interface, or me and anybody else, or anybody else and me, it adds to the complexity and the fulfillment of my life. As long as I don't, feed my wanton desire for having more toys before I die than the next guy. I mean, really, it's like, well, how to waste your time, you know?
Yeah, well,
Lots of stuff.
let's keep that, communications open for exactly what I'm hearing you say is, we're not limiting it in any way, but we want to find the people that this resonates with and build a quorum, so that we can have not just well, what we want to have is the diversification of minds and thoughts and ideas, and when that comes through, and with the communication levels high, we'll it's an experiment, and it's a scientific methodology that we'll be applying for recording the information, analyzing it, and visualizing it, and making decisions from it. So
I want to take a moment and praise you, actually, and your science, because without you, this couldn't be enabled. You have the wherewithal, you have the talent, skill, the ability, the imagination, the enthusiasm to take an idea that we had, and this is not our first one. We started with gross national happiness in Bhutan, right? And see where that could go. And we realized, that even things like that have their limitations, particularly if they're, structured within one way of thinking, like maybe a Buddhist way of thinking, or not not to say it's limited to that, but there are other interpretations of that as well. I mean, for instance, I'll mention Nietzsche again, who says that happiness is the free exercise of power. Well, I don't know if anybody in Bhutan really know what to do with that. Not casting dispersions or anything, but that's thought-provoking, to say the least. And what if I disagree? Well, are you free to disagree and still be included in the society? Well, in the Bureau, I think you would be, because we want to find a common space for people who are against trashing the planet, against accumulating masses of wealth that are not good for more than one person. You know, I think we have to share this. I don't want to sound, you mentioned hippie earlier, you know, I don't want to sound like I'm standing on the corner of Haight and Ashbury and, you know, in San Francisco. Those days are gone, but we're leading somewhere. You know, this is not a pronouncement, you know, this is not nailing an edict to the church door. This is principally saying we want to start over. And we want to start over freely and with like-minded people to see what we can come up with without being elected, without being appointed, you know, all this sort of stuff. And of course, there are, you know, hundreds of areas in which we invite that talent, from cryptocurrency. Look, that's all virtual, for Christ's sakes, you know, and then whatever. I suppose everything that's not needed to keep our organism alive and breathing, that we're dealing with this space, right? And then this space, what we can do with our hands, and of course what we can do through speech and communication to create a perfect virtual world. And nobody need be threatened, you know. We're not taking anything from you. We're not taking anything from you or you.
Yep.
We're experimenting. We're playing.
Exactly.
With results in mind. I think it's possible.
Well, yeah. Let's do it. Let's see.
I'm all for it, man. And this is our first one, right? So we made a beginning stumbling through this, but I think that the more we get it out, our thoughts, because I think we're going to make friends instantly with people. They have questions, you know. The whole idea is to invite their imagination and their input, and what can we do together?
Yep.
And that's the interesting part, and I think a good place to begin.
Me too.
Yeah.
Right. So I will finish the recording here, and
all right.
Yeah, we'll look forward to hearing feedback and comments and responses to this podcast, our first number.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll keep them coming.
There will be more. There will be more.
Okay.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you, Danny.
All right.